All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Diamonds and Rough podcast. Finally got Tim back on. It's been a while. Our schedules
Woo!
have lined up. We made it happen.
Hell yeah.
Not a great topic to talk about, but we're here.
One I'm
Um,
passionate about though, so
One we're passionate about. So I was at the game Thursday, Pat's
I was
Bills.
as well.
You were as well. That's right. So
Yeah.
it was just miserable.
Oh God, it was yeah. I mean, just you knew going into the game that we were, at least I did, that we were gonna get spanked, but we looked good early and the wheels just completely fell off the bus. And it's just embarrassing at this point. Like we have to use our cornerbacks out of the backfield and like it's I
Which I
just
must say was successful.
it was successful, yes, but like obviously the Bills weren't expecting it, so I feel like they could have saved that play for a more useful time than like very early in the game. But it worked.
I
So
think a better question is, as great as the Marcus Jones stuff was, because he was one of the few who played well. I think there were four guys who played well. We'll get
yeah,
into it. But, when that TD happened, obviously, fans had hope. 7-3, you're up, you're looking good. But isn't that like why we drafted Tyquan Thornton?
bro, he looked so good in the Cleveland game, and they haven't have they targeted him since?
He got some good garbage time stuff, but I'm like, why aren't
Yeah,
we trying to use him at all?
that's
Which,
what I'm
like,
saying. Like he had a catch at the end of that game, and I was like, well, why are you not throwing to him when it matters? Like
this is just going to
he
be a
looked really
20,
good in the Cleveland game. He looked elusive. So
this is just going to be a 20-minute, like, rant about Patricia, and I think we should just get into it.
it, I mean, he just should not be coaching an offense at all. Never mind. I mean, he shouldn't be coaching a defense. Never mind an offense.
Yeah.
But
So I think the usually when people are 100% against something, that says something, right? And
yeah,
if you even want to go in recent news, different sport, but the Rudy Gobert trade, every single person who knew anything about sports, like, this is a terrible trade, and the
yeah,
Timberwolves right now are a mess. I feel like Matt Patricia was the same thing, where when we saw Matt Patricia was going to be the offensive coordinator, anyone who knew anything about football was like, this is a bad move.
yeah,
I was trying to go into it with an open mind, and I thought there were, when Zappy was a quarterback, I was like, he's doing a pretty good job, like, managing him. And there were some plays that I liked, and I was always like, it's never like that with Mac, though. And it's
yeah,
still, to this day, there's never been a Mac game plan that has been good.
yeah.
Even
No,
his best
yeah,
game in the Vikings game, there were times where it's like, why are we running on 3rd and 4? Mac is cooking.
right, right. There were some throws in the Ravens game that I was like, he like the kid can play. Like he can play. Just like
Yeah.
let him do something. He's shown his ability to make tough throws. Not all the time, but I mean, when he's making tough throws in that Baltimore game, I just feel like you have to adjust and switch your offense at that point.
I think that ankle injury was tough because I thought in the Baltimore game, my expectation was there's going to be some learning lessons here,
Yeah.
and he's going to be better, but you shouldn't change anything because I liked the calls they were doing. They were really letting the offense go, and then with the Zappy stuff, and I partially blame New England fans the way they treated stuff with Zappy.
Hmm.
Mac was clearly rock bottom,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we kind of had to retrain him all his rookie year stuff to try to get him to a good spot. And then the Vikings game was the game you're like, he's back to his rookie form at least.
Yeah.
And
He was definitely executing at his
yeah,
rookie form. Yeah.
and then that's when I was like, okay, I'm not gonna pick him against the Bills, obviously, but I have some hope. And then we just go back to this, you know, I like to call it, and I think I say this so much, but they were playing to not lose. And you're never going to
Yeah.
win when you play to not lose. You need to play to win.
Yes. And I think that's always kind of been their style in a way is that they play to not lose. And you can get away with that when you have the greatest quarterback to ever play the game and the offense is rolling. But when your offense is also playing that way and your defense is playing that way as well, it's much tougher.
Yeah, for sure. Um, which the defense was actually okay. I thought. I
You know,
mean,
I don't think the defense has been terrible, but they're not. I wouldn't say that they're a great defense either. And very clearly, the best games that they've had have been against bad quarterbacks.
yes, they have been
So
exposed these last 2 weeks, I would say.
yeah,
And
uh,
Judon's
I
going
just
back
think
to last year.
I just think it's all the mistakes that they've made over the past few years have been roster construction, in my opinion. And unless Bill is going to be stripped of his GM title, then I don't think he should be here. To be honest, I think he's hurting this franchise the more that he makes decisions.
So
Like
do you want to get into this right now? Because you texted me this and I wanted to save it for here because it's a discussion that I don't think is ridiculous to have. The
at
just
this
Bill
point,
in
I don't
general.
think so at all. And I've been saying this for since the
I'd
beginning of
say
the year, even into last year,
I'd say
that I
Brady's
thought it was his
final
way.
year, you were starting to talk about it because
Oh yeah,
you were very invested in, the Brady falling out and everything like that. And that's when you're starting to say stuff to me like, if I was Brady, I'm leaving because Belichick is this and that. Um, and it's not me necessarily saying like, you're right with everything. It's just like you were very early on it, and
yeah.
like you objectively, you're kind of right about a lot of things you're saying.
I just think that I read the situation pretty well and didn't really let my love for my team get in the view of what's really happening. To be honest, I think too many Patriots fans sit there and say, "Well, Belichick's Belichick, so what he
And
says is
I'm one of
right."
them.
Yeah, like you know what I mean. Like, and you can't, in my opinion, you cannot have that opinion, especially when he's shown that he is just an average head coach without Tom Brady. Over and over and over again, he has shown that, and I just don't get why people think he's the people still consider him the reason for that dynasty. And to those people, I say I consider your opinion null because at this point, if you can't accept that Brady carried the weight, I think you're not living in reality.
Okay, so that is a completely different argument. But I
Yeah.
want to start with my Belichick stuff of
Mm-hmm.
like my take on it. Because I am one of the people who's like, it's Belichick though. And this is just kind of how I view sports in general. I view it as like if you win a title, there's like a 5 year grace period where you just can't say a thing. You cannot say a thing because they won a title, and it's like you're gonna be mad because like they lost in the playoffs or something when they just won you this title, that kind of thing. So in Belichick's case, I'm there like, okay, he won 6 Super Bowls all throughout my life. He leaves when he wants to leave, in my opinion. And I knew that it wasn't necessarily good for the future of the Patriots. I kind of did just think, I think it needs to just, it's done. I don't think he also had an opportunity to construct a championship roster.
Right.
So that is kind of my reason of why when you say like Brady's more important than Belichick, first off, I just hate the argument. They needed each other. I
I know
truly
they
think they
needed
needed
each
each
other,
other.
but I know they needed each other, but I think that there's much less of a chance that Brady's a bum elsewhere than Belichick is. I think it's pretty clear that Belichick without Brady is not himself. So, and he
He's
can't
not
run an offense
himself, and I
clearly.
also think Brady isn't the best version of himself without Belichick. And I know he won a Super Bowl, but that roster was just completely stacked, and the defense helped them a lot. And I think that's how it's been throughout his other 6 Super Bowls. And this is not to discredit anything you
I
do.
get
It's
that, but does Tampa
football's
get
a
anywhere
50.
close to a Super Bowl without Tom Brady?
No, and we saw that because they
No,
had the similar roster with Jameis
no, they
Winston.
do not. That's the correct
So
answer.
yes,
And for that reason alone, I think you have to take into account the Brady factor. Brady changes a locker room. He changes an attitude. Last night they were down 14, or what was it? It was 16-3. They were down 13 going in the fourth quarter and marched back. Why? Because they went no huddle. Tom Brady started calling the plays and they just believed in him. And that's how it's been his whole career.
which
You hop on that guy's back and he will take you to glory.
real quick, we'll get back to it, but I need to mention the Patriots offense needs no huddle. Mac
Yes.
throughout
Yes.
his
Well, the only
career,
time they run no huddle is when Brady got pissed
no,
when
no,
he
they've
was
done it
here.
with Mac in his rookie year towards the end, and it was very successful. Like
Yeah.
in
I mean,
certain drives, and he is smart enough to do it. And I also think no huddle really helps a bad offensive line. It really does because then you
for
have the
sure.
same defensive guys out there and they are not having the same, they're not rushing at you the same way three previous plays because they're getting tired. So they
For
need to
sure.
be
Yeah.
doing that.
I think that I think that was a very good point, and I think that last night's Monday Night Football game shows that as well. I mean that game completely flipped once they started playing no huddle. So they got the New Orleans defense exhausted as well, and that offensive line just didn't have to do as much as they had been doing all game. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it wasn't as much about getting Brady time to throw as it was just him mechanically working his way downfield as quickly as possible, you know. So I do definitely agree with that point that the no huddle helps with the bad offensive line.
Yeah. Um, and then with the Brady Belichick stuff, I also like you might be able to agree with this. Like it's tough to talk about because it's just like I don't want to bash anyone when they won that much, and it's my
No,
team, right?
I agree. I love Belichick and I hate talking badly about him. But you know me, I'm very critical. I'm not the type of guy that's going to absolutely be all in on you on someone no matter what, unless they're Tom Brady, who's an anomaly. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? He's an anomaly. There has never been a Tom Brady. There will never be another Tom Brady. That
exactly.
is the only reason I'm all in on Tom Brady all the
I
time. I never bet against Tom Brady. But
no,
with that being said, I think people are a little like, what am I trying to say here? It's almost like a
too
utopia.
forgiving. You're just too forgiving.
It's almost like Patriots fans treat New England football as a utopia as long as Belichick's here, which is just not the case. We're in a reality,
Mm-hmm.
and Belichick has made many mistakes over the past few seasons,
Oh
not
yeah,
just as a GM, but as a coach as well. I'm not saying he's been a bad coach, he's been a good coach for
yeah.
sure, but he has been slipping and he has made some big mistakes. So I think one of them being Mac Jones should not have started that game against Chicago. He was
Yep,
not ready. You run with the hot hand. Bailey Zappi should have started that game. And if Bailey Zappi got blown out, so be it. Then you go back to Mac. But
for
that
sure.
shook Mac for sure. And hearing all the Patriots fans chant for Zappi in that game shook him for sure. And you cannot sway me anyway against that.
Not only chant for Zappy Tim, but they were booing him after every drive, whether it was his fault or not.
Yep.
It would be like first down run to Stevenson, -2 yards, right? And then like a holding call. So it's like second 22. Then he makes like, a bad throw because he's on a bum ankle. And then third down just gets blown up and it's a punt. And it's like they're booing back. And it's like that's not really his fault. That's a everybody else failed type of thing.
Right.
And Patricia
And
with
as
bad play calling.
I completely agree. And to add to that point and to agree with you, I think I feel terrible for Mac in that I have been disappointed in him. This year, I think he could have played better this season, 100% in the opportunities that he had. But with that being said, the offense around him is just a complete dumpster fire, and I don't know what quarterback could come in here right now. Honestly, I think like maybe Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes could come in and it could be some semblance of an offense, but
Maybe
I don't
Joe
know what
Burrow.
quarterback could come in and work with this right now. And I
I
think
feel
that's
like
scary for the future in trying to recruit free agents, in drafting players, in trading for players, etc. That's scary.
this offensive scheme and even build is super similar to the Chargers right now, and they have the same record as us. Because I see Herbert out there, and I just feel bad for him. It's like the same exact thing. It's like, what are we doing?
Right. I, I mean, I think a lot of the Chargers issues has to do with losing Rashawn Slater.
Yes,
Um,
that's true.
he's just an anchor on that
Mm-hmm.
line. He was one of the best draft picks in their history, in my opinion. He has looked great, but um, yeah, I they have been disappointing even without him. And I think that they definitely were looking at J.C. Jackson as an upgrade defensively, and he went down for the year as well and hadn't been playing well when he was in there.
Yep.
So it's it's kind of a wash of a year for the Chargers, in my opinion. But they have the main pieces there that I think they need to contend in the AFC. So it'll be interesting to see down the stretch if they can turn it on.
Two things. One, do want to give Bill credit of not signing J.C. Jackson. It was a good move. When a lot of fans wanted to sign him.
I still, I, I'm still on the side that I would have signed him, John.
Really?
Even though he had a bad start and he got hurt for the year, would I prefer J.C. Jackson and taking a chance on him who had proved that he can play in this defense and was very good for you, or would I rather have Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry? Like to
Okay,
me, it's no
but
question.
hang on. That's not like that's not the argument though, because it's like they already had them.
No,
So
I
it's like
understand that, but if you don't sign those guys, you have the cap
that's
to
fair.
bring
That's a
J.C.
different
Jackson
argument.
back and more.
I meant this off season. Like we have what we have. Should we sign him or not? And every
Right, but
Patriots fan wanted to. If you are
I
like,
mean,
I would
at
rather.
this offseason, I don't think they could have. I don't think they had the money to sign him. But
I think it would
with
have.
that being said, I think that's a result of Bill making mistakes and spending money he shouldn't have spent.
Which real quick tangent. Everyone craps on the Titans for trading AJ Brown, and my issue is you have to, and this is to help your argument. You have to go back to them signing Tannehill to that stupid deal because since they signed Tannehill to that stupid deal, they can't handcuff them by signing AJ Brown $25 million, who has been injury prone his whole career. Right now
Right.
he hasn't been hurt, but it's like you have to go back to other stupid moves. So like
Yeah.
today the Titans GM got fired and like, oh, AJ Brown like fired his old GM or whatever. And it's like you have to go back to like terrible draft decisions and
Bad moves are cataclysmic.
signing a mediocre quarterback to 26 million.
It's yeah, I completely agree. Bad moves are cataclysmic, and it's when you look at Belichick's track record over the past few years, in my opinion, it's only getting worse.
Which let
So I
me I think you'll agree with this. First off, we never did like a draft preview. I don't think we usually do. But I
uh-huh.
know there's one guy who you told me about him and I did my research and I wanted him so bad and you wanted him so bad. And it's George Pickens, right?
Yeah,
Which we had the opportunity to take him. We took Tyquan Thornton instead. We both would have rathered Pickens. I was a little higher on the Thornton pick, which to be fair, he's looked good when they use him. They just need to use him. But George Pickens looks like a wide receiver one, right?
yes, yes.
And this is, I think, where
As soon as the Steelers took him, not to cut you off, but as soon as the Steelers took him, I knew I was right.
oh yeah, because they are always right on wide receivers.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the thing I think we need to talk about with Bill is the whole Patriot way thing that they did. I think the reason it's successful is because you have a Tom Brady. So you can go for less skilled guys because of their character when you have someone who can
absolutely,
make up for the skill. We're not in
absolutely.
that position.
Yeah,
George Pickens was an absolute stud. And I think he does so many things that Bill would love, like, blocking cornerbacks when they're not even in the play just to get in their head. Right. But yeah, you can go, oh, he's a bit of a head case. He's a little out of control.
and he had
I
some
don't care.
injury
He's
issues too. But
he what?
yes, I agree.
The injury issues?
He did have some injury issues as well. Yes.
Yes, for sure. but they were also looking at Jameson Williams, who had torn
Right,
his ACL.
right.
So to me, that's not an excuse. It's just you had a bona fide, like he's going to be a star if he's healthy.
Yeah.
And it's just those are the kind of moves that I can't be okay with because you're going with your Patriot way system when it's like that can't apply anymore.
Bill loves to sacrifice talent for work ethic, and at the NFL level, that does not work in the higher rounds. Um, Especially when you can get these guys later, in my opinion. Like the past few drafts that he's had, everyone's actually been saying that they've been good for him. I have not liked them. There have been players there that we should have taken that had more talent and more upside, and we went with guys that Bill liked. I just don't get it, and I think that that was part of the reason that Brady wanted to go at the end because he takes a N'Keal Harry, who he had a good interview with, over a guy like an AJ Brown,
Oh
over a guy
yeah.
like a DK Metcalf, etc. in that draft. But it's just getting confusing to me why he continues to sacrifice talent everywhere he adds players. Free agency, the draft, trades. It doesn't work when you don't have the greatest quarterback of all time. You need to have talent in this version of the NFL. You absolutely have to, especially in skill positions, both on offense and on defense. And we just do not right
Yeah.
now. Other than Ramondre Stevenson, who I think is a stud.
He's a stud for sure. And just to look back at, because I think the two drafts, everyone was like, they were great drafts, right? I think everyone thought that. You might have thought it, but yeah, I think there's certain cases it could be better. Like, okay, Mac was a perfect pick. I know right now it ain't working too well, but I also don't blame him.
Yeah.
Barmore was a perfect pick. They traded up to get him. That's a stud. He's been hurt, but already in year two, he's getting double teamed the most out of defensive tackles. Then it's like round three, Ronnie Perkins. I I didn't really see much from him. And third round, I feel like you got to get someone who can help you immediately.
Yeah.
And are we in the second year of him being IR'd
Yeah.
and being nothing? And that's like fourth round picks, great with Stevenson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
But you
like,
got him where you should have. That's my whole point.
right.
You know what I mean? You don't pick a guy that you like in Stevenson in the second round and say, oh, well, we got a good player. So it's a good pick
Yeah.
when you can get him 2 rounds later, which is Bill's problem.
Mm-hmm. And then here's something I do want to mention. They picked McGrone round five, which was like cool. He had some potential. He
Right.
had the leg issues. They're like, they're going to work on it. But then when it gets to this year and they don't take a linebacker, when we all agreed their linebackers were an issue,
Yep.
he's like, we picked one last year. And it's like, it's a fifth round running back who hasn't played or
Yeah.
linebacker who hasn't played. You can't rely on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then to look at this year's draft, Cole Strange was, I'd say a round too early. People were saying fourth round. I don't think so. But that's another pick to go with the Brady thing where it's like, he'd be so much better if Brady was a QB.
That's what I mean. Right. I agree. But what I'm saying is like Cole Strange was rocketing up draft boards at the end. I agree. But you still sacrifice talent to pick him in the first round.
Yes.
And it, 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 you could have gotten him in the second. And in my opinion, you maybe, probably could have gotten him in the third. So I don't, I just don't agree with that aspect of Belichick drafting for value. He sees value as, oh, this is a good player. We should take him before he gets off the board. But that's not how the draft works. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you have to take the most valuable player at that spot in the draft
Yeah.
and try and get someone else later. Or if you feel that there's no one of value in that slot, then you move back. It's not that hard.
Yes.
Like,
And then we talked about Tyquan Thorne pick, which I think we're okay with the player. It's just you chose to not take a super talented guy because of some character stuff, which I think the character thing is just kind of run out.
right.
I think there's a lot of guys, especially at the wide receiver position, because they're all divas, truthfully,
Mm-hmm.
where it's just a lot of these guys have these character things that, right? Like Justin Jefferson, in theory, is not a Patriots guy with the
No,
dancing, the grills. I don't care. Like, take him.
I did hear reports that they were trying to take Jefferson though and moved back once he was taken. So, uh, I mean, I can appreciate that they didn't get him, but even with that being said, they just haven't done anything right at the receiver position. They haven't done anything right at the tight end position, and they're very lucky that Ramondre landed in their laps in the fourth round. So, um, to me, I just don't think it's sustainable, specifically draft wise.
Yeah.
But I think they've made some serious mistakes in free agency as well.
Now, here's a question. I wanna talk this topic first and then get into the Mac quote. I think is pretty important.
Mhm.
Do you think Bill would be a better coach if he wasn't the GM?
I think that the roster would be a lot better if Bill wasn't the GM. I think that there's a lot that comes with that, though, with Bill not choosing his own roster. And that's why I personally think that Bill needs to go. But I think, like, if Bill, like Parcells said, like, if you're going to go, like, you should let him shop for some of the ingredients, right? Like, but at this point, I just don't think he's the right guy to be cooking the meal. Like he's made mistake after mistake, and to me, I think you need to tell him like we're gonna go another way at GM, and if he's stubborn about it and creates a fuss and it's starting to hurt the team, then I think it's time to move on because uh, I mean it's the past 2 years we've clearly been mediocre, and I think we've been better than we should have been, in my opinion. The past few years, especially this year, I feel like we should have lost the Cleveland game. I feel like we should have lost a lot of other games that we played in. The Jets game, I think we should have lost at home. The Jets game on the road, I think we should have lost because
Yeah, I mean,
Mac
I
threw a pick
predicted
six
seven
that
and
got called
10.
back. What
So
was that?
I predicted 7-10. So the fact that they're 6-6 to me is pretty surprising, even though there was a moment where you're like, could be looking at playoffs.
Right.
Now I think I know we're a game back and have the tiebreaker over the Jets and we're tied with the Chargers, but it's like our schedule's brutal. I
My
have no
preseason
reason to
prediction
believe.
was 5 wins with a max of 7, and I've stuck with that the entire season. And I think I still think that's the case. And I think we should be worse than that, like the way we've played, in my opinion. Like
But could you attribute some of that to Bill's coaching though?
I do, but I also
I
think
think it's
that
more
there were
relevant last year than this year. I feel like we've just gotten like lucky more this year, whereas last year I thought there were some really good coach games that are like all Bill.
I agree. I agree. This year, the onside kick in Cleveland,
Yep.
very lucky that went our way. And I think we lose that game if it doesn't go our way.
Yeah, momentum was all them.
The pick six in New York that Mac threw, that he got touched and it was called for roughing the passer. Very lucky. Do I think that it was consistent with other calls of roughing the passer in the NFL? Yes. But with that being said, I still don't think it should have been called at that time. But that changes that game. We end up winning that game. The game against the Jets at home, we should not have won that game. We just in no way. The Jets shouldn't have either, but in no way playing the way that we were playing should we have won that game.
If Marcus Jones doesn't take it back, we're 5-6-1. It's a tie.
Yes,
No will
I think so
story.
too. I think so too. But with that being said, I do think that the intimidation factor is still a thing with Belichick because you see these other coaches on the sideline just shit their pants when they play him. I mean,
It's
it's
intimidation to certain
ridiculous.
coaches.
Certain coach, yeah, I agree.
McDermott
There are
doesn't
some guys
care.
who are above it. There are some guys who are above it, but there are some guys like I mean Sean McDermott clearly above it,
Does not
right?
care. I'd say the
Does not
Miami guy
care.
doesn't care.
He will be aggressive. Mike McDaniels will be aggressive against the Patriots. He does not care. He will attack you and he will win. But and that's why I think they're going to lose the second Miami game too. But
I agree.
with that being said, I think that in a lot of those 50-50 games, the coach on the other side is scared because it's Belichick and they make mistakes.
And they
And
question things that normally they shouldn't.
right, right. And I think that's part of the reason that we've won some of the games we've won. And I really think that we're worse roster wise, at least, um, than our records have been.
Yeah. All right. Final thing, and then we'll wrap it up. We really went a little deep with it, I feel like today.
It was a good analysis of the state of the Patriots, I believe.
No, I think it needs to be that way because just in sports, general doesn't matter. Mediocrity is the worst place to be.
It's the worst place to be. I'd
And
rather lose every single game and have a high pick. I really would than be
I
mediocre.
agree. Because
I,
what to be honest, it hasn't been fun watching the 6-6 team.
no,
It
no.
has been pretty
Losing is losing, in
miserable.
my opinion. Losing is losing. I
Yeah.
don't care if you're mediocre. That's losing.
Because the
So
other thing is, I think for some teams, like being mediocre and making the playoffs, even though you're going to get spanked, it's cool, right?
yeah,
Like if Cleveland made the playoffs, it'd be like, oh, yay for them, right?
yeah, right.
We Patriots have won Super Bowls. We would rather go, you know, 0-17 for 3 years in a row and then win a Super Bowl. Like
This
we
is the
are,
Boston market. We play for championships here.
yeah,
It's not how this is. We don't play for mediocrity.
yeah. So I
So
think it is good to talk about like what's the trajectory or any possible way this team can turn the tide, and it's not looking good with what we have. But
part of it, I think, is that Boston GMs are afraid of the full rebuild and what they'll face.
for sure.
Um, if they rebuild completely in a city like Boston. But with that being said, it's proven time and time and time again that if you full rebuild, you will be a competitive team at some point, as long
Yes.
as you do it right. Like,
So many teams are scared to do it. And even like the
yes,
Panthers were
yes,
kind of scared. Like they didn't want to trade Brian Burns for 2 first round picks. Like, what are we doing? You're
right,
not going
right.
anywhere. And
I
he
know,
is not
I
a
know.
top 5 defensive end. So many teams are just scared to do it. And I just think that's stupid. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you take a year or two of losing, and then you might not even be competitive, but you're fun to watch,
I
right?
think that's
Like,
especially the case in football, just because I think everything is so hyper inflated almost. Like if you lose one game, it's the end of the world. You know what I mean? But um, I definitely agree. Even in football, it's been shown that if you go full rebuild and you really build a base of a team, and then you add when you're starting to build, that's what makes a really, really good football team.
yeah, like I think this is going early, but the Jags did a full rebuild, and
Yep.
next year, who knows? I mean, Trevor Lawrence has shown a lot of things. Maybe he finally puts it together. They have a lot of nice pieces. Maybe Trayvon Walker looks good.
To
I
me,
think
they've built a base.
Doug Peterson is a capable coach.
Right.
ETNs they're starting to use. Like that would be 3 years and they could be competitive again. And for that organization, that's huge. So it's just
To
things
me,
like
they've
that.
built a base and they're going to start to add. And they did already with Christian Kirk. I didn't agree with that contract at all, but and I didn't agree with that he was the right person to add, but um, it was an addition, and they're going to keep adding. They have a base in Lawrence. Lawrence is a good quarterback. Yes, he had a rough first year. He had a bad coach. It was a bad team,
I
and
don't
I
blame
don't
him
think
at
that
all that first year.
I, anyone who was put in that situation as a rookie, it would be hard to succeed at all. So
Yeah.
I just don't. I didn't get the hate on Trevor Lawrence after 1 year. I still consider him the best quarterback in that draft class. And I think that he's going to show it, especially as they continue to build this team. He's been great this year, in my opinion. He's been underrated.
He's been
Um,
amazing. And the reason he's been underrated is because Fields had his whole 150 rushing yard games all the time that
right.
And you look and it's like, oh, Lawrence just had 300 yards and 2 TDs and no interceptions. But I guess we're not going to talk about that because
Trevor
Fields
Lawrence,
ran the
John.
ball.
Trevor Lawrence is the Josh Allen of his draft class
I like that. We're just all of a
because
sudden,
Josh Allen, you and I both said he's so clearly the best quarterback in this draft class. It's not close.
yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, I literally like we saw his like Wyoming workout. We're like, how does he not go like number one after
He
that
should have been the
alone?
number one pick. I laughed when they took Baker Mayfield, bro.
Oh, it was
I
so
laughed.
funny.
Um, but yeah, I mean, he's just and Allen came into the league, and his first year wasn't awesome. Not even his second year wasn't awesome,
Hmm.
but he showed signs, and people gave up on him immediately. And I was like, I still think he's the best quarterback in that draft class. I
I
would still
think
take him over even Lamar, who was showing that he was an MVP candidate at that point. So I think that in all of sports, but especially in football, because like I said, reactions are hyperinflated, that you have to give rookies time. Like, and you have to give young players time. Not every single young player is going to come in and produce right away. Some guys, it takes a little bit of time to adjust to the professional level.
I think you and I are very good at acknowledging that
Yeah.
in like the sense of like we can look at a game and it could be 90% bad from a rookie, but we'll look at the 10% good and be like, that's special what he did. I don't care necessarily about all the other bad stuff. Like that's gonna happen. And especially with Allen, it's like when you're playing at Wyoming and then
Yeah.
you go into the NFL, it's gonna be a struggle. Like it just
Right.
is.
Yeah.
Um and that was kind of I know I was talking about, we had the whole Zappy stuff and I was starting to talk like it's impressive what he's doing going from Western Kentucky to I know the offense is babied for him right now, but he's not making turnovers and he's getting it there. Like it's encouraging to see from a potential standpoint.
Yes.
But
Yes.
I want to end it with the Max stuff, um, which I saw how frustrated he was and I felt for him and I agreed with him. And the quote was something like, it was like, just let's throw the ball down the field. We're doing this stupid run game all the time. It's not working. What the
Yep.
hell? And when they asked him about it, post interview, he was straight up. That's what I said, and he said the most professional way possible, being like my emotions get to me and all this and that. It's like, but I agree with him. Like it's so obviously agree with him, and I am glad that people spoke up. And Kendrick Bourne literally falling on the sword to try to get this team going by outright crapping on the offense
Right.
and the coaching,
And I think
which,
that's part of the reason he was doghoused as well, is because he was a little vocal earlier in the year as well. And I think that's why we saw less and less of him in the offense, which is another thing that I fault Belichick on is his doghouse. And I know that it was good for us at points, especially with running backs who had fumble issues.
yep.
But I don't get doghousing guys.
It Here's the thing, and this kind of goes back to the point we talked about earlier. I think it works when you have a Brady who can just
Right.
make other people better, and that you can
Or
go for
even when you
guys.
have a roster that's a Super Bowl contender.
Yes, like
Like,
you can have guys who are worse skilled but behave more, and it's like they're more coachable. That's the guy I want. You mess up, you don't get playing time. If you want to compete for a championship, you need to show me that you're ready to do it.
right.
That kind of things. But with the teams we got going now, it's like Kendrick Bourne is like the second best wide receiver on the team skill wise, I would say. And
Mhm.
at times looks like the best. Um and
I would
is
probably
Matt
consider him the best, honestly.
I agree, but and it's probably Mac's favorite weapon if you look at last year and the few snaps he got this year, he's always looking to throw to him.
Right. Right.
And it's like he just has to be out there and now he's not going to play again.
Yeah.
I think that there's been so many reports basically confirming that what he said makes it so he's not going to play again. And it's like, what are we like? What's
That's
Matt
just
going to
bad
do?
coaching, in my opinion. That's bad coaching.
So
When you can't acknowledge that you've made mistakes, that's bad coaching.
that's the big thing is when it's like you have clearly messed up and you are taking no acknowledgement. And honestly, this might just be the new age kind of thing, the new age kind of NFL that we're getting to is you need coaches who are more player coaches than actual coaches because the skill level is so much higher. I think that might be a case because I saw Sunday Mike McDaniel, they go to him or whatever, and there was no audio, but the players confronted him about something. He said, "I just messed up. I'm sorry. That's on me. Like I just messed up." Like, he's
Yeah,
taking accountability for what he did, and honestly, they've been successful, and he's kind of rejuvenated to his career by just believing in him,
yeah,
right? And you
yeah, for
see
sure.
how he's playing, and I know they had, it helps when you have Waddle and Hill and all that. I'm not trying to give to all his credit, but
Right.
I think there's so many instances nowadays where you need coaches who are more player coaches than actual coaches. I think Alex Core is a fantastic coach, very
Yeah,
good player coach. I think with these new Celtics, Joe Mazzulla, I don't necessarily know his X's and O's, but I know the guys love him,
yeah.
and they're 20-5 and historically the best offense of all time so far. And I know those are other sports, but I think we might just be
Jim
going to a new
Montgomery's another
age.
example with the Bruins. I mean,
Yup.
I Cassidy was a great head coach, still is a great head coach. I love Bruce Cassidy, but boy was I wrong. They needed to switch it up. And Jim Montgomery's been nothing but great, and he's a player friendly head coach, and that's what we needed. So
Maybe it's just the new way of sports.
I mean, I think it is. I think in the modern era, you have to be a human being to coach a team. There's no more of these uh, gruff older guys who it's their way or the highway that can succeed, in my opinion, um, in today's world of sports. You gotta be lenient, be able to adjust, um, and you gotta be able to work with talent.
Because here's an idea, right? That I just thought of now, for instance. How do you like coach a Tyreek Hill? Like you cannot relate to his athletic ability in any way and how good he is. How are you going to coach a guy who runs like a 4.32?
Right.
At a certain point, you just got to say use it and go
Yeah, just do what you
and throw to
do.
him.
That's how you coach a guy like that. You know what I mean?
And I think that's why maybe that's could be part of why like Belichick could get the most out of these certain guys because he is a smart guy. Let's not act like he's
Mhm.
not, whatever. But Edelman, he didn't
Oh,
have like
yeah, for
that
sure.
4.3 speed or whatever, but Belichick could get the most out of him. And even Welker too, if you want to say him. Um, and
Yeah,
that's like a much easier guy probably to coach because of the coachability. And he doesn't necessarily have this elite ego um, and physical traits. But I think there's a certain point where it's like, yo, this guy's just absurd. You need to just let him be him.
yeah, yeah, for sure. The thing is, though, Belichick would never bring in a guy like that, in my
Absolutely
opinion,
not.
unless he's Randy Moss, we can get incredibly cheap because he's on a downturn. You know what I mean?
And
Like,
that's the thing. That's the one instance they did it. And I know they didn't win a Super Bowl, but was it not a massive success?
oh my God,
His
a huge
record's still
success,
standing.
right?
They went
And
undefeated until the Super Bowl.
right, I mean, they were inches away on that bomb at the end of the '07 Super Bowl
Yeah,
from being right there. So I don't know. I mean, I understand why he was a little hesitant to bring in talent like that, but at the same time, like you need talent to win in today's game. Like maybe
for
back
sure.
then you could get away with it, especially when you have a quarterback like Brady and you have Teddy Bruschi and other leaders like that on your team. But we don't have leaders like that on our team right now. I mean, Devin McCourty we do, but in Devin McCourty we do, but other than him, I don't think we have guys who can lead by example in terms of how they play. McCourty's up there. I'm not saying he's a bad player at this point, but he's certainly not himself anymore. Um, so I think that it's just time to move on. Football has changed, and Bill is not changing with it, in my opinion.
I was definitely heading into this not thinking this way, but I'm kind of even talking myself into it. And I don't think it'll happen. I don't even necessarily know if it should, just from a standpoint of that it'd be tough if it's like you got these two legends in Brady and Belichick and there's a big falling out.
Yeah,
Like that would suck. But um yeah, I mean this kind of has opened up so many questions and so many topics, but I don't want to make it too long. Um
right.
so we will wrap it up. But
Yeah.
I just wonder, that Pat's Titans game of Brady's final game, that might have been the shift where it's like Vrabel was just a player's coach and just let his best players do their thing, and Derrick Henry, literally, and just Derrick Henry, honestly, and beat
Right.
us. And it wasn't even a whole
Yeah.
lot of football. It was just give him the ball and let him do his thing, and we couldn't stop it.
Right. And I'll
And
say, I'll be the first person to say that Brady isn't the player that he was in the prime of his career,
yep,
but he was still making throws. He was still the brain trust on that offense. And I think it was very evident that if you give him a little talent, that offense was going to be a lot better. And Bill Belichick just refused to do that at the end of the Brady era. So,
I was at that Titans game. I was in the eighth row. No one was open. There was nothing Brady could do. He made some of the greatest throws I've ever seen him make that game.
yeah,
There were certain throws that I just didn't understand how he did it, saw it, why he threw it. um, I think, and I honestly, I'm not even gonna lie, I might have been behind on this trend. Because for instance, I wasn't high on the Bengals picking Jamar Chase. I thought they should have gone the elite tackle because I'm like, O line's the way to win, and I still think battle of the
right.
trenches is how you win, but clearly that was the right pick, and it's starting to trend that way that you need a elite receiver. I think
Jamar
it's
Chase
tough.
has shown he's the Randy Moss of his era, in my opinion.
Yeah,
He's an anomaly, and I apologize for being wrong about him coming out of the draft.
yeah,
But
we were both wrong about him, but
I just for some reason I just didn't see it in him, and I'm usually good with receivers, but
I think it was
um,
tough because he took the year off, so we
yeah,
kind of forgot a bit about him.
mm,
But I don't even like necessarily feel bad about it because I was just like, okay, the Bengals clearly need O line help, so get the best O lineman. You have T Higgins and Tyler Boyd, who I like both of them. They don't need a wide receiver, but hey,
if I had really known that he was this good, I would have understood it more. But I did not know that. I thought he was a first round receiver, but I didn't think he was the best receiver in football, which
yeah,
I think he is right now.
that's a debate that we could have, but
I mean, it's definitely a debate, yeah. But I think in terms of who I'd pick as my number one receiver of anyone in the NFL, I think I'd probably pick Jamar Chase.
that's fair. I mean, you're looking at him, probably Jefferson, Monte Adams.
That's true. Jefferson is
I'd say
very tough
those.
to not take as
I'd say
well.
those three. I would take Jefferson, but I understand taking either of the other two. But I don't think there's anyone else
I
who could.
might take Jefferson just because he's a little healthier usually,
Also,
but
I still can't get over that like 4th and 23 catch he had in clutch time to like. I
oh my god,
still
that was one of the greatest catches I've ever seen in my life.
To me
I,
that's
I
much better
that's
than the OBJ catch, which is widely considered as
I
one of the greatest of all
I think
time.
it's up there. I think it's definitely up there. I think there's a debate to be had, but I think that that's right there, if not better.
Yeah. The thing with the OBJ one though is like it was so clean.
Oh yeah,
With Jefferson, I think
and it
everyone's
was
like,
for a
there's
touchdown. That's the other part of it.
yeah. With Jefferson, I think there was the like, did he catch that? There's
Oh, it was
no
ridiculous. I
way.
couldn't believe it. I could not believe that he caught it.
I just respect that like if he doesn't catch it, it's game. you know.
I know. I'm in the middle of a
But
podcast.
all right, we'll wrap it up. Tim, appreciate you for joining. We have a lot of topics, honestly. We might have you back on to talk more in depth of some of the stuff we're talking about, but always good to do it with you and great to have you back on. But we'll
Sounds good, man.
we'll wrap it
Definitely.
up there. Tune in next week when I have to do another Pats recap. Hopefully a W. Actually, maybe hopefully a loss. Maybe we just want to lose out. I don't know.
I do personally. I don't think we're going anywhere,
Yeah, but
but we'll see.
um, yeah. Tune in next time. Peace.